Soulmates, we are back with plenty to discuss on this Wednesday, January 25th. We want to welcome you to FOXSOUL's Black Report. I'm Courtney Hicks.
And I'm Nicordelai Corte. As always, Soulmates, we are honored to stand behind this desk each day to take you on a journey across Black America and the stories that impact our people.
That's right. We're going to bring you our news, our views, and our voice. So let's look into a top story of the day that takes us to Georgia. As a woman's body was found at her job, police believe her boyfriend is responsible for the murder. 34-year-old Courtney Owens was found dead on December 9th inside the Snellville car dealership where she was employed. She was shot by a man who was allegedly hired as a hitman by her ex-boyfriend and former business partner. The alleged gunman, 23-year-old Wesley Vickers, who was arrested about a month into the investigation, was hired by 41-year-old Stoney Williams to kill Owens. Williams, who has not yet been detained by authorities, is being charged with malice murder, felony murder, and aggravated assault.
A quick-thinking 7-year-old is being hailed a hero. Her great-grandma was pretty badly hurt after a car rolled over her leg, but she's recovering in the hospital. Here's Fox 2's Jessica Dupnick. She has the story.
It was like really scary.
You can hear the terror in 7-year-old Mariah's voice. That's because her great-grandma was pinned under a rolling SUV in their driveway.
She got out, but the car was still moving, and she had to hold on. She was trying to push it that way, and then she fell, and the wheel was over her foot.
The 79-year-old was dropping Mariah off at home in West Bloomfield, thought the SUV was in park. It wasn't, and started to roll. She tried to stop it, but got trapped. Mariah in the back seat knew exactly what to do.
I took the keys out, and then I went to the doorbell, and I rung it, and then my mom came out.
I kind of panicked. She was more calm than me, I believe.
Mom, Portia Lane, says blood was everywhere, and great-grandma was hurt. EMS here on doorbell camera. Then she was taken to the hospital, where Mariah is by her side.
She was like, "Thank you," and stuff. "I love you with all my heart."
This one equal parts sweet and smart.
I always watch my mom and my grandma, like when they take their keys out before they get out.
They're waiting on more tests to see what kind of damage was done from being pinned under that tire.
You saved your grandmother's life, and she said, "I did what I was supposed to do." That's what she told me.
Mariah has a birthday coming up next week. She'll be 8, wise beyond her years.
Always be really careful and follow your heart.
Reporting in West Bloomfield, Jessica Dupnick, Fox 2 News.
Yep, that Mariah sure is equally smart as she is sweet. Thankfully, great-grandmom did not suffer any broken bones, but did have to get stitches and blood infusions for bruises, blisters, and blood loss.
Oh, what a sweet, sweet story. Glad great-grandma's going to be okay. All right, moving on here. Memphis's district attorney says the release of police video in relation to the death of Tyree Nichols could take weeks. Nichols died just 3 days in the hospital following his encounter with Memphis police. The DA says the delay in releasing the video is to avoid the chance that suspects or witnesses will tailor their statements based on what they see in the video. Now, the details of that video could not be discussed, but the district attorney said as a human being and as a father, he was distraught by the footage.
Thousands of people are in shock today after a magnitude 4.2 earthquake struck near Malibu in the Los Angeles area. That earthquake happened just before 2 a.m. Pacific time after the initial quake. Aftershocks followed, and the first one was a magnitude of 3.5. The second with a magnitude of 2.8, and the last one reported had a magnitude of 2.6. Fortunately, there are no reported injuries or damage. The earthquake was a rare phenomenon in the Los Angeles area, as they usually don't report earthquakes higher than a magnitude of 2.
Yeah, definitely still continuing to focus on these weather events, earthquakes, tornadoes, flooding. I do want to say maybe a summer or so ago, the fires in your neck of the woods that they couldn't contain. And it just speaks to, the conversation that we continue to have every time stories like this come up is how are we treating Mother Earth, and how can we do better about preservation and how it affects the environment and the climate.
Yeah,
I just think there's a direct correlation.
Well, definitely, climate change continues to be an issue, and there's no shortage of stories in the news that we've been reporting on that front. But, good to see that this earthquake wasn't as bad as it could be. I know a lot of folks are anticipating what they call the big one in California. Yes, we've been anticipating the big one, for a very long time, big chunk of my life. But good to hear from friends and family in the Los Angeles area that everybody is just fine. I texted earlier today with my DC bestie, who now lives in LA, and he said he didn't even wake up.
Wow. Well, how are you doing back here, Detroit, FOXSOUL headquarters, Detroit Black Report, FOXSOUL headquarters?
It is snowing here in Detroit.
We have a bit of a weather event, not as bad as, the onset of it. It might get a little bit more dicey as the days or hours move on. But right now, to tell you the truth, Nicole alive, being from Detroit and a Midwest girl, it's not that bad. You just got to slow down, take some time, allot yourself some extra travel time. I used to do traffic reports.
Oh, really?
Yeah, slow down.
Well, listen, I have a confession.
Yes.
I have never used a scraper, a snow scraper, in my entire life. Even living in DC, I never used a snow scraper.
You're going to learn today.
Check out our social media, because I'm going to be using a snow scraper, and Courtney's going to go out to the parking lot and teach me how to do it right.
I sure will. I care.
I know you do. Now, moving along, former heavyweight boxing champion Mike Tyson is facing a $5 million lawsuit. A woman is accusing Tyson of raping her sometime in the early 1990s. The woman has chosen not to publicly reveal her name. She claims that Tyson attacked her in a limo in the early 90s after she met him at a nightclub. The lawsuit is filed under the state's Adult Survivors Act, giving sexual assault victims a 1-year window to file lawsuits over assaults that happened years ago. Tyson's representatives have not responded to the lawsuit.
And speaking of a lawsuit, after a 2-year legal battle, rappers Jay-Z and Yo Gotti have dropped their lawsuit against Mississippi State's Parchman Farm Penitentiary. The Social Justice Department of the Team Rock dismissed the claim last week after the facility improved its conditions, saying that they are pleased with the changes and the improvements made in the day-to-day lives of those inside. The hip-hop duo first filed the lawsuit back in 2020 during the quarantine period of the pandemic, when they represented over 200 inmates at that prison. They claimed that the facility had unsanitary living conditions and neglected the prisoners. Now, according to a stipulation of dismissal filed in a Mississippi federal court, the suit is being dismissed without prejudice, meaning the lawsuit from Team Rock could be refiled if the conditions worsen.
Changes to the framework of a highly controversial AP African American Studies class is now underway. The College Board made no reference to the state of Florida when it reportedly announced that it plans to make changes to the framework of its course. But the news comes on the heels of a rejection from the state of Florida and accusations from Governor Ron DeSantis that the court aimed to indoctrinate students with ideologies not allowed in Florida schools. The Florida Department of Education previously said in a letter content in the course was contrary to Florida law and lacked educational value.
And as you can imagine, soulmates, all eyes are fiercely still focused on Florida as the governor is now being sued over the banning of the high school AP class. Attorney Ben Crump says he plans to file the lawsuit because Governor Ron DeSantis rejected the AP African American Studies course. The State Department of Education says the course includes critical race theory, which is banned by state law. On Monday, you may remember, DeSantis claimed the course seeks to indoctrinate students and cited the inclusion of topics such as queer theory, prison reform, and systematic racial and socioeconomic inequality as examples of inappropriate course content. Crump has also announced a lawsuit against the state on behalf of 3 AP honor students over the state's decision to reject the new AP African American Studies course.
Meanwhile, there's one professor in Florida who says he won't allow Black history to be whitewashed. Dr. Marvin Dunn, who is a professor emeritus at Florida International University in Miami, Florida, has gone against Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' law prohibiting lessons on race with his, quote, Teach the Truth tour, where he highlights racism in the state. Dunn is one of 8 plaintiffs in the case against DeSantis. Stop Wrong to Our Kids and Employees Act. The professor has been sponsoring his Black History Tour through his Miami charity to take students to historic sites spotlighting Florida's history with racism.
All right, so continuing with this discussion, there's a bill that would limit certain teachings on race in public schools and allow parents to challenge educational materials. It is moving through the Republican-controlled South Carolina House of Representatives. Now, the proposal is the latest iteration of a GOP-led nationwide effort to crack down on what some conservative politicians have dubbed, quote, critical race theory. The South Carolina measure, co-sponsored by several members of the legislature's newly formed Freedom Caucus, would bar circular from including or promoting certain concepts around race and other demographics. Republican Representative Ray Felder emphasized that the bill does not prevent classroom lessons on controversial aspects of history or the history of ethnic groups. Rather, Felder said the bill seeks to ensure that teachings on both the inspirational and shameful history of the United States are non-biased. And I see Nicordelai Corte, doctor, professor, you already have your notes open to address
my notebook here.
All of these stories. I mean, just back to back, if you will, layers to this huge argument, which has become really an uproar, if you will, especially from our particular culture, as to, again, why our history is so debated, why it continues to be so hidden and denied, because, as I've said time and time again, our history is American history and should be valued as such.
And of all places, South Carolina should know better. It's important to note that there's a lot of what's in the South Carolina bill that looks a lot like what was in the Florida bill. And I think there are 3 pieces that I think our soulmates may want to know about with regard to this bill. It would take effect in the 2024-2025 school year. It requires school districts' websites to include list of appropriate books. It requires schools to create a process for parents to challenge material that may potentially violate those guidelines. And so this is just another example of why it's so important to teach Black history, why this movement around banning Black history, banning books, not being able to say gay in schools in an educational setting, how it is growing across the country, and we would be wise to take it seriously.
Nothing to add to that, except for the fact that who is the who to set the standards? Who is the who to say what books are appropriate or not? I have a problem with that as well.
Yeah.
Who is this who?
Yeah, and a lot of the books that are being banned are books by Black authors. Toni Morrison's Beloved is being banned in schools. George P. Johnson's All Boys Aren't Blue book is one of the most banned books across the country. And so this is not just happening in Florida or South Carolina. It's happening everywhere, and we're going to continue to keep our eye on it.
Yes, we will.
Moving along, the city of South Fulton is taking on the problem of youth gun violence. Just last week, a 17-year-old was shot in the head while taking out the trash. Now, city leaders are rolling out a new initiative to keep kids out of trouble. Our colleagues at Good Day Atlanta have the story.
People just have too much access to guns in our community.
It's been a heartbreaking and all too familiar problem. Young people taking part in and being victimized by gun violence. Just last week in the city of South Fulton, 17-year-old Maquavius Blanchard was shot in the back of the head while taking out the trash. Tuesday night, McQuavius's mom pleaded with South Fulton leaders for more safety measures and patrols along Old National Highway near the complex where he was shot.
My son could just go there and to take out some trash, and that happens to him. I can imagine the fear that those people live in on a daily basis.
South Fulton police say they were in the middle of a multi-day crime suppression detail at the time, arresting more than a dozen people for trying to break into cars, drugs, and illegal gun possession.
The citizens that live there, they ask us to keep a close watch on that community because there have been some things in the past.
Cracking down on crime is just one way city leaders are attacking the problem.
We're going to have an opportunity fair where a lot of local nonprofits and jobs that are hiring young people, mentoring young people, and offering internships will be here.
The city's also partnering with rapper Young Dro to help get out the message.
There's solutions involved in the conversation, and I do want to give the kids a chance to speak to us being the OGs and the big homies, and I feel like we should give them a voice.
The town hall on youth gun violence is scheduled for tomorrow. Young Dro is also expected to perform a song dedicated to those who've lost their lives to gun violence, including Atlanta rappers Takeoff and Trouble.
A Fort Myers woman is behind bars in connection to a theft spree targeting Ulta beauty stores. Now, according to police, 22-year-old Devaja Ford is facing multiple charges of grand theft for stealing over $15,000 worth of cosmetics and fragrances from the stores. Now, according to reports, the thefts occurred between December 15th of 2022 and January 15th of this month. Because of an Ulta beauty policy, deputies weren't called right away. Officers say that during their investigation, they found that Ford was running a Facebook page where she was selling those items for profit.
This week, several U.S. representatives led 30 of their House colleagues in introducing H.R. 308, better known as the Rosa Parks Day Act. It's all to designate December 1st as a federal holiday honoring Rosa Parks. On December 1st, 1955, in Montgomery, Alabama, Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her bus seat to a white passenger. Representative Sewell was an original co-sponsor of the Rosa Parks Day Act in the 117th Congress and is now leading the introduction of the bill in the 118th Congress. While several states have adopted their own holidays honoring Mrs. Parks, there is currently no federal holiday recognizing her contribution to the civil rights movement and to our nation. Courtney, I've got to ask, is this the sort of black history that the folks in Florida and South Carolina want to ban students from learning?
I don't know. I think there's been certain figures that have been pinpointed and maybe deemed as safe. There was no issue with learning about, or that I can remember, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King. You may have gotten a little bit into Malcolm X, Harriet Tubman, and then you get into all of the inventors who laid out inventions that have, of course, changed everyone's lives and enhanced everyone's lives. So I think there's like this certain group that is deemed okay and safe. And once you go beyond that, you start maybe getting into the Garveys and things of that nature, that people get scared because it does kind of like it blows up the spot, if you will, in regards to just a holistic thinking and direction as black folks. It taps into the fact that we had different paths to getting to where we wanted to go. There was even, differences in the civil rights movement amongst those folks. So yes and no. Yes, in the sense that, these figures are safe. No, in the sense that there's more to learn, obviously, which is what this whole push is about.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, it takes time for some of our historical figures to be deemed safe, in history books, right? And so, I'm sure that there are folks that would push back against somebody like Patrisse Cullors, one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter, being mentioned in a textbook today. But fast forward, 20, 30, 40 years from now, maybe that might be different, right?
Yeah, it's just an ongoing conversation. And I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think it's just predicated on is and what we can agree to. Yeah, as far as our culture is concerned. Up next, keeping account on the homelessness in LA.
That's right, what Mayor Karen Bass is doing in hopes to end what she calls a nationwide issue. You're watching FOXSOUL's Black Report. We'll be right back.